Paul Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this Monday night slash evening, the 26th of January, 14 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. East African time. And I do come to you live, like I said, from Kampala, Uganda. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope you had a wonderful day. It's been quite a hot one with some afternoon drizzles or little bit of rain for us down in Kampala. But like I said, I do hope you guys have had a great one. Tonight, we'll be looking at some appalling statistics about Arsenal, taking a more, magnified lens into their performances, not just in recent times, but perhaps across a given period of time. And yeah, following that defeat against Manchester United, there are certain facts that perhaps we had overlooked or underlooked, depending on which way you want to slice that. But all right. As we get into that one, you'll have me have our audios tested, just to make sure everything checks out. But while we go through this broadcast, we'll also be keeping tabs on that game between Leeds United and Everton that is ongoing at the Hill Dixon Stadium. And as we speak, that game is goalless between the two sides. So, yeah, Dominic Calvert-Lewin back to face his former bosses. Not a return at Goodison Park, but at least he gets to come back against his former side, a club where he spent 9 seasons. There, played under the charges of Marco Silva, played under the charges of Carlo Ancelotti, played under the charges of Frank Lampard, David Moyes, Sean Dyche, so it had been quite the run for him. So really, that's where our focus is. Then also we'll talk a bit of transfers because Flamingo did reach an agreement in principle with West Ham for the transfer of Lucas Paqueta, the Brazilian midfielder. And then we'll talk about perhaps maybe Nottingham Forest's interest in Jean-Philippe Mateta of Crystal Palace. Anyways, our audios appear to be fine and everything in that line. So that will form the basis of our conversation tonight. Nonetheless, I wish to say thank you to all our new subscribers, to all our new community members that have recently joined the channel. For our usual suspects, I can never say thank you enough for the time you dedicate to keep in tabs with us for everything that we do. So tonight, perhaps I was thinking of a poll question that I should put up for us, and and it still had to revolve around Arsenal. So you'll help me respond to this. Do you think Arsenal will win the Premier League title? That's the poll question tonight. Do you think Arsenal will win the Premier League title? So it's a yes or no, maybe let's add another option for our neutrals who may be unsure of where things may fall. So yeah, that's our poll question tonight. Do you think Arsenal will win the Premier League title this season? Do let me know what your thoughts are using that poll question. Just respond to the poll, give us your answer. I didn't want to lawyer you guys up to leave it to a yes or no. I wanted to give it a bit of leeway in case you're unsure. Then you can leave it at that. So, anyways, yeah, like I said, we'll start off with Arsenal. But there's some appalling statistics that I landed upon and have been making the rounds across Um, they've been making the runs, and I thought they are worth our time. And it has everything to do with the Arsenal attackers, and we'll take a bit of a magnified lens through them. They're not all. I feel, of course, Gabriel Jesus is not here. Kai Havertz is not on this list for reasons that we know. He's been out injured throughout the season so far, or thus far. Gabriel Jesus, we know, just returned from injury. He's played what now? 4 or 5 games so far. So he will not form part of our debate. But I thought Arsenal's attack is worrisome, is worse than we actually thought. I hope that's not a mistake. Allow me, correct this. Is worse than we actually thought. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, when you look at their forwards, Leandro Trossard, Bukayo Saka, Victor Gyökeres, Noni Madueke, there's some appalling statistics that you'll find. Gabriel Martinelli. Now, our focus will be on the Premier League and in some respects across all competitions, depending on the player. So there will be that variation. Bukayo Saka has not scored a goal for the Arsenal in 13 appearances for Arsenal across all competitions. 0 goals. Gabriel Martinelli has not seen the back of the net in 13 Premier League appearances. Victor Gyökeres has seen 0 goals in the last 11 Premier League appearances, for which those goals haven't been a penalty. Because I know somebody will be jumping to the fact that, he scored against Everton in that 1-0 victory. Yes, he scored the penalty. But I'm saying a non-penalty goal in 11 appearances. None. When you go across all competitions, of course, he scored against Chelsea, he scored against Inter Milan. When you go back to Gabriel Martinelli, he just scored a hat-trick at the start of this month against Portsmouth in the FA Cup. He scored, was it against, in one of their most recent UEFA Champions League games. Not the Inter Milan game, not the Slavia Praha game. But yeah, Noni Madueke, 25 Premier League appearances without a goal. Now, all these appearances are not tied to Arsenal. This dates far back to his days at Chelsea. Noni Madueke, 0 goals, in 25 appearances. Now, then you have Leandro Trossard, who scored only 1 goal in the last 11 appearances across all competitions. Now, 2 things are very unlikely to happen. If you want to win a Premier League title, there are things that must happen for you. And that if they do not happen, it becomes increasingly or largely unlikely that you win a league title. For most teams that win a Premier League title, they have that outright striker or that outright goal scorer. Liverpool last season had Mohamed Salah, 28 Premier League goals. The year before that, Manchester City had brought Erling Haaland, and so did the previous 3 seasons when they won it while he was still there. So that's a statement of fact. Now, one will ask, how come Arsenal have been competing for the last 3 seasons and finishing second? And yet they did not have an outright striker. My simple answer will be, they did not win it. And that's our point exactly. That for you to be able to win it, you must be able to get certain things go your way. You must have certain basics. And among those basics is having goal scorers. It could be more than one. Last season when Liverpool were winning it, Luis Diaz was a huge contributor. Cody Gakpo was putting in the goals. But like I said, they had Mohamed Salah to literally carry them through. When you look across all recent Premier League title winning teams, Man City being the dominant side of that, they've had that outright goal scorer, or they've had many goal scorers with many goals. What's happened with this Arsenal side is that you have multiple goal scorers with very few goals. Because today, they'll win a game and Eze has scored. I think he has about 5 goals to his name in the Premier League. But those 5 goals, he scored 3 of them in one game in the North London Derby. When you look across the board, when you go to a player like Victor Gyökeres, who has what? About 6 goals, maybe 5. Okay, not good enough. Bukayo Saka, I continuously struggle to remember the last time he put the ball in the back of the net. Why? Because if it's an oil well, it's one that is drying up when it comes to his goals. If you're sipping on a beer, then you're on your last sip. And because you know it for a fact that it's the last sip, you decide to split that one sip into tiny bit of sips, maybe 4 at best. That's what it's felt with Bukayo Saka. Goals just dried up. His goal well dried up. When it comes to Gabriel Martinelli, I stand to be corrected if he has more than 2 Premier League goals this season. He scored against Manchester City, and I don't remember against who. Now, he's not started game in, game out, but going 13 Premier League games without a goal is appalling in itself for a player of his quality, because we know he's capable. We're talking about a player who, in one campaign, managed to score 15. Same applies for Bukayo Saka. Victor Gyökeres, I could excuse him for certain mitigating circumstances that are justifiable. How his teammates struggle to find him. It's a new league for him. It's a new team, plays a totally different style. Name it. I can cut him some slack. Yes, his performances are oftentimes wanting as an individual, but the collective contribution of a team to help him succeed has equally been twice wanting. When it comes to Noni Madueke, he's yet to live to the bidding. £52 million paid to Chelsea to get him. Brought in as the alternative to Bukayo Saka. He's yet to live to the bidding. I mean, he's not scored a Premier League goal in Arsenal colours. We're talking about a player who was already playing in the Premier League that if to accommodate him time to acclimatize, it shouldn't take him too long. Because when you do draw comparisons between Enzo Maresca's football and that of Mikel Arteta, the disparities may not be that many. Could be just a handful. But the overall approach of the game is largely the same. Leandro Trossard, he's a player that, for a given period of time, carried this Arsenal team forward, through and through. in the last 11 appearances, he's been off of it. So, unfortunately, those are the appalling facts. They are worse than we actually thought. When you look at the Premier League table, and you're looking at that column of goal scored, and this speaks to my point that I want to stress. When you look at that column of goal scored in the Premier League, you have Arsenal have scored 42 goals, the second highest in the competition, behind Manchester City, who have scored 47. Of course, United come third with 41, Aston Villa 35. You'll have a 39 for Chelsea, blah, blah, blah. But they come second, only 5 goals behind Manchester City, who Man City have an outright goal scorer in Brad Erling Haaland, who already has 20 Premier League goals to his name. That means he scored nearly half, or at least more than 40% of their goals in the Premier League. For all the 42 goals that Arsenal have scored, I do not think they do have a player who scored more than 20% of that. That's appalling in itself. When you go back to the campaign of 2022-2023, Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus, but the other 3 were huge contributors to the goals that they scored. When you go back to the season, because, in that season, they did score, how many was it? The 2022-2023 campaign, Arsenal scored 88 goals. The season subsequent to that, meanwhile, Leeds have scored, and it's 1-0. They're leading Everton by 1-0. When you go to the season subsequent to that, which is the 2024 campaign, they scored 91 goals, 5 behind the eventual champions, Manchester City, but also more goals than Arsenal scored in their invisible season. I think they fell 1 point short of that season of the Invisibles because they finished at 89 points. And I stand to be corrected, but I do seem to remember Arsenal winning that Premier League title of 2003-2004 with a tally of 90 points. Exactly, because Chelsea came second with 79. Now, when you look at it as a whole, or when you go with those trends, it's appalling. Last season, they struggled to score goals. Okay. They only scored 69 goals. About 17 goals adrift of the champions, Liverpool. Manchester City, in third place, scored 3 goals more than them. Now, forget all the draws and that whatnot. It's because of that few tally, of course, because goals are a crucial thing, really, in the game. You win the game by goals. Sometimes by scoring many goals. That's when, on a bad day, you win a game by 4 goals to 3. You win a game by 3 goals to 2. You win it by 4-2. That kind of spirit. As opposed to 1-0, 1-0, 2-1, eventually it gets to a 1-1. So it's because of that low tally of goals last season that there was a huge demand or a huge outcry, a huge clamor for a striker. They needed somebody to buy the goals, to contribute to that. Now, you have a striker who for reasons that I've just given, easier to hit the numbers. Easier to hit the numbers. What are the odds that he gets by? You know, because it's how should I put it? Yes, Victor Gyökeres is the club's top scorer in the Premier League, with Leandro Trossard. Both have scored 5 goals. That's a combined 10 goals. Only half of what Brad Erling Haaland has scored as an individual. Then you have Eberechi Eze and Bukayo Saka, Declan Rice, and Mikel Merino, who have scored 4 goals. Now, take key note of that. That among the players that have scored 4 goals is Declan Rice, a central midfielder, and Mikel Merino, who is a makeshift striker / midfielder. Then next there is a cohort of players in Martin Zubimendi, Gabriel Magalhaes, who have scored 3 goals. Then you have Yurian Timber with 2, and Ricardo Carafiori with 1. Forget not that there came a spell when Arsenal won games due to own goals. Now, 3 points is 3 points. That's often the justification, and I stand with that. 3 points is 3 points, regardless of how you get them. The ends justify the means. But for how long do Arsenal think they can carry on like this? Patrick Vieira yesterday spoke about their lack of creativity. You see, when you struggle to make good of your chances, then you must create them in plenty. In other words, if you want to score 50 goals, then you must create 150 or 180 chances. For Arsenal, they want to score 50 goals by creating 70 chances. And yet, they're not that clinical. That's a problem. I was contributing to an enraged Arsenal forum. Wow, how did Dominic Calvert-Lewin miss from close range? Jesus Christ. Everton are being railroaded at the Hill Dixon Stadium. Wow. They are all over the place. Was that a save from Jordan Pickford? I need to look at this again. I don't even know where the ball hit. Oh, it hit the upright. He just hit the upright. How unfortunate. Anyways, back to the conversation. So they are that poor. Arsenal, their top scorer has 5 goals in Leandro Trossard and Victor Gyökeres. That's appalling. Now, again, we're talking about a team that thinks should be winning the Premier League title, or that wants to win the Premier League title. When you go to Manchester City, where but Erling Haaland has 20 Premier League goals, the next top scorer is Phil Foden with 7 goals. But in there, they also have Tijan Reinders with 5. You know? So 2 Manchester City players have contributed 27 goals. Right? Out of the 47 they've scored. The other 20 is what is distributed among other players. For the Arsenal, what you have is you have their top 4. You have their top 4 goal scorers with less than 20 goals. Their top 4. In fact, their top 5, okay, let's say top 6, because you have 4 players with 4 goals. That's 16. plus the other two, 26 goals. Two Manchester City players have scored 27 goals. 6 Arsenal players have scored 26 goals. It's a problem. So I was making reference to the Arsenal forum that I'm part of. And when they were talking about this lack of creativity, and of course, laying the blame on Mikel Arteta, as they should, or as deservedly should be the case, I said what Arsenal need is the Mikel Arteta of 2022-2023, and for the Mikel Arteta of the 2023-2024 second part of the season. Now, I don't know about you, but we seem to have lived through this season up until this stage, living on some form of optimism, some form of hope and faith that Arsenal were going to sort of spark into this whole big flame and, become a goal scoring machine and become a creative machine, a team that sweeps every opponent off of the floor because of the quality that they do have within their squad. Like I said, Arsenal do have the best squad in the Premier League and arguably the best squad in Europe when it comes to overall quality and its overall distribution across the squad. Now, when it comes to the overall quality for starting 11, the teams that can field a better starting 11 than Arsenal. PSG could, Bayern Munich could, Real Madrid could, Barcelona could, hell, Man City possibly could, Liverpool could for that starting 11. But once we go beyond that, beyond the ultimate starting 11 and uncover what more you can bring to the table, that's where Arsenal preponderate the others. Now, how they are using that. So far, for purposes of team rotation, I think Mikel Arteta has done fairly well. Not well enough, in my opinion, because I still do not understand why, when Zubimendi has tired legs, I never understood why he had to play him 90 minutes in the game against Inter Milan. But again, that's his decision to make. I still do not understand when Martin Zubimendi has tired legs, he can never call on Christian Nogard, a player with Premier League experience, a player who has captained a Premier League team. I do not know what bone Mikel Arteta has to pick with Christian Nogard. I do not know what he has seen about Christian Nogard that he doesn't appreciate enough to give him game time. And I'm not talking about him being a starter, I'm not talking about him being the starter in that central midfield. I'm talking about when things are difficult, when you need control, when you need some bit of grit, when you need some fresh legs to chase around opponents, when you need to defend better overall in the game. I never understand why he never deploys him. Yesterday was not even part of the matchday squad. So, as unfortunate as that sounds, it's on Mikel Arteta to blame. Now, I did say in the build-up to that game that with all his squad available, he can only accommodate so many players within that squad. That's why they've had the luxury of letting go of Ethan Nwaneri to go to Olympique Marseille for the rest of the season on loan. Now, twice he's deployed Christian Nogard as a centre-back, and he's played well against Slavia Praha, and then I think in that game in the FA Cup against Portsmouth. But his lack of game time is really, really concerning. And I understand he's a backup player, he's a squad player, but hell, Jorginho possibly played more minutes last season than we've seen Christian Nogard this season. So why not use him anyway? Then, Arsenal's lack of creativity has everything to do, one, with their pace on the ball, two, with their mentality. They have this backward mentality that oftentimes they're playing the ball backwards than playing it forward. Now, I understand the idea of recycling the ball until the opponent opens up and things like that. But because they are accustomed to going for what appears as comfort or security first, oftentimes their mind appears to be prejudiced to going back than going forward, that they never see the spaces when they open up in front. Yesterday, there's a moment, and this was reviewed by, I think, Sky or something, or BBC Sport, I'm not sure, but Wayne Rooney was part of that analysis. And they showcase where Martin Zubimendi receives the ball, and there's a gap of space where he can't play that ball into space for Declan Rice to run onto, and he doesn't that. He instead turns backwards. Then you have Martin Odegaard literally hiding behind a Manchester United player. And when he comes in front of him, that's a risk pass because that ball can be nicked off of him. You know? So, and you know the frustrating thing about this Arsenal side in the Premier League is that there seems to be a sharp contrast of what they are in the UEFA Champions League. In the UEFA Champions League, they are more expansive. They are quicker on the ball oftentimes than they are in the Premier League. Now, of course, part of the justification to that is the difference in approach of the opponents that they encounter in the Premier League versus those they encounter in the UEFA Champions League. But the sole reason as to why they brought in players like Noni Madueke, players like Ebelechi Eze, is to give them that competitive advantage to go against, to go against low blocks. My other concern is, how many goals have Arsenal scored from outside the box this season? I guarantee you, or kid you not, they are not that many. Why? Because they do not take that risk. There's nobody constantly trying to take that risk. Now, by taking that risk, I do not mean that every time you reach in front of goal, go for it when there's a better option for you to play into. But they seem to want to play that intricate pass through a cobweb of opposing players or the opponents, as opposed to finding a little bit of space and take the aim at goal. Because when you're playing against teams with low blocks, for as long as those teams can remain disciplined, the way Nottingham Forest did, you're going to find it hard to find a breakthrough. Yesterday, I saw a team that wanted to rely on set pieces to win a game of football. Now, I do not fault them for using that avenue as part of a chance to create goal-scoring opportunities. I do not fault them for that. But their lack of creativity largely pointed out that they had resigned themselves to that sort of avenue. I mean, how many corners did they get in that game? There were quite plenty. You know? Quite plenty. And when I say quite plenty, did they make good use of that? Only one of their goals came from the set piece play. So that means even in that sort of thought after chance, it did not fall. They were poor executors of that. There are 9 corners in that game. Eventually, they got 1 goal. They did not get 2, which could have earned them perhaps a point in that game. And then also, it's a combination of factors for me. Usually when they score a goal in the Premier League, that intent to go and kill off the game, that game to remain, to keep pushing up the opponent, it's like every time they score a goal, they're like a deflated balloon. But then they fall off the pace and then concede to the opponent to say, it's your turn to have it now. I've seen this script time and again. I saw it yesterday against Manchester United. I saw it against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Really, the one that game, they never deserved to win it. In my opinion, I thought Wolves deserved a point in that game. But once they score against Wolves, they sort of retreat back, and Wolves have a go at it. And eventually they score, and it's 1-1. You know, it took that late own goal for them to earn all 3 points. Then, something happened against Sunderland. In that 2-2 draw, they score the second through through Leandro Trossard, and they fall off the wagon. They start crumbling all over the place. They start making costly mistakes. Now, twice, Martin Zubimendi has committed fouls which have resulted into goals. The free kick against Liverpool and in the game versus Sunderland. Now, it's okay to commit a foul, and usually, for me, if it's not a penalty, if it's not a free kick on the edge of the area, I say, yeah, the entire team then has a responsibility to try and defend that so that it doesn't convert into an opportunity. The game between Leeds and Everton is going into halftime, with Leeds leading by 1-0. So now, then against Tottenham Hotspur, when Spurs had a sniff, he goes on to concede possession against Paulinho, and Wilkerson scores. Yesterday, something happened. Trying to, the mentality of going backwards as opposed to going forward, plays the wrong pass, and Mbeumo scores. Now, it's not a Zubimendi issue. It's an Arsenal issue. Now, you can fault him for some of those mistakes. But if you focus on the individual alone, particularly in the 2 fouls, then you may miss the point. The point here is, and apart from the Liverpool game, the other times it's happened, it's when Arsenal have been in the lead. Either 1-0 or 2-1. Against Bournemouth, before they could even score, I think it was around the 6th minute or 9th minute, Gabriel Magalhaes was culpable at that moment. How many times have we seen a pass back to David Raya and had to take a sigh of relief? Why? Because it almost got nicked off of or got intercepted in the middle. I can count on one hand 5 errors Arsenal players have committed due to a lapse in concentration or judgment that have led to goals. Versus Aston Villa, the 2 goals. Eze doesn't track on Matty Cash, he scores. Pierre Hincapié keeps the ball in play very late on in the game. Aston Villa end up scoring. Gabriel Magalhaes versus Bournemouth. Martin Zubimendi versus Man United. Martin Zubimendi versus Tottenham Hotspur. That's lapse in concentration. Now, I'll excuse him for the fouls in Liverpool, for the free kick, because again, it was a world of a free kick, and perhaps the one against Sunderland. But look into yesterday's action. Could he have done more to put off Patrick Dogu before he scores? Maybe. But the entire midfield was at fault. So he's there. Then we look around. Martin Odegaard. What's happened to his creativity? What's happened to the passes, the kind of pass that he played for Declan Rice against Bournemouth last season? Where's that player that can pinpoint a pass, that sees the space, that sees the entire field? Where's that player gone? Ryan Cherki this season has been everything that Arsenal think they have in Martin Odegaard. And I'm not trying to throw shade on Martin Odegaard, But I'm questioning him because I know what he's capable of doing, that he is capable of delivering, that he's capable of coming good. But we are not seeing it week in, week out. It's just fizzled out. It's just not there. Now, if Arsenal want to solve their creativity problems, the question is, who do they then look onto for creativity? One, the solutions lie within. I, for one, think Eze should be scrutinized more, but given more chance. The mentality of the Arsenal forwards ought to change. And so should the midfield play the ball forward. And so should be the backline. Play that ball forward. You remember how Arsenal won against Bayern Munich? Attract the press, go long. Yesterday, they tried it, but it looked very effective, but they did not try it hard enough, I thought to myself. You know? So, when it comes to Arsenal, it's a combination of factors that I feel are failing them. Because really, they are at the summit of the Premier League table. Really, they are 4 points ahead and had been 7 points ahead. What the Manchester United defeat exposes about this Arsenal side are the fears that we already had, are the concerns that we already had. They've scrapped away wins. And, you know, to be a champion, you have to scrap away some wins. Not every day, match day, you're going to have a good game. But prior to that, we had seen wanting performances against Nottingham Forest and against Liverpool, particularly. So it's not like this is a one-off. And like I said, as we speak, they've now lost 3 games in the Premier League this season. Against Aston Villa, against Manchester United, and the other was against who? Against Liverpool. This season, they are yet to get maximum points on any of the big teams. A draw against Man City, a draw against Liverpool and a loss, a win against Aston Villa and a loss, a win against Tottenham, they are yet to play again, a win against Man United and a loss. So tell me, what's the trend? What does that tell you? You know, a draw against Chelsea, we do not know how the return leg will be. You know, so it's pretty concerning if you're an Arsenal fan, particularly in the Premier League. And it's not going to get any easier in the next couple of weeks. Why? On Wednesday, they play Kairat Almaty. Same squad has to be deployed. After that, they play away to Leeds. Leeds, if you've watched them recently, they've been a good team. They're not the best of teams, but they've been a good team. They posted some fairly good results to be better than the Leeds that started the season. After Leeds, you play Chelsea on Tuesday, 3rd February. After which, you play Sunderland at home. Play away to Brentford. We know what's happened to Giants who have gone away to Brentford. Now, over the weekend, Nottingham Forest went and won there by 2-0. But I bet you not, Arsenal could go there and drop points. After that will be the fixture against Wigan Athletic. After Wigan Athletic, on the 22nd of February, they play away to Tottenham Hotspur and at home against Chelsea. After Chelsea, 3 days later, they will play away to Brighton. And about, I think a week later, because it will be March, I think we'll be going for the March international break. Then they will return with Everton. So really, then when you push it in April, they have a match against Bournemouth, Man City, Newcastle. Those are very difficult fixtures. They have Fulham at home. Fulham can be party spoilers. Remember West Ham in 2022, 2023 campaign. Fulham, particularly last season, caused trouble. So really, it's not really encouraging. And I give you that, without the factoring in of UEFA Champions League, because UEFA Champions League will pose questions of its own, It will pose questions of its own going into it. So you ought to keep that in mind. Then, okay, just briefly. Like I was saying, Leeds are in the leads at halftime. That game should be returning soon for the second half. But that goal scored by Justin is still the difference. Now, when you look at Leeds' form, they've had 3 draws, 1 loss, and 1 victory in their last 5 prior to today's game. Like I said, not too bad, right? Because it's easy to dismiss those draws, and yet 2 of them have come against Liverpool and Man United. The victory came against Fulham, they lost against Newcastle, the other 2 against Sunderland. So, do not dismiss them. So that's who Arsenal play on match day 24. They'll be hoping to bounce back. We'll be waiting to see if they can bounce back, because that game has no room for error. There's no margin for error in that game. Really. That's what will be at stake for the Gunners. Anyways, guys, allow me to wrap up the Arsenal conversation there. Do let me know if you agree or disagree with that submission. Jesus Christ. You know that Tammy Abraham deal? You remember he was it on loan from AC Milan? Was it? Now, they paid 11 million pounds, 11.2 million pounds for him, and then sold him to Aston Villa for 18 million pounds. Easiest profit they will ever make, So 28 years of old, 28 years of age. He had been on loan to AC Milan. He was still a Roma player. He was there for the 2024-2025 season, where he scored 10 goals in 44 appearances. Not good enough. I remember him coming up and Arsenal having a bit of interest when he was still at Chelsea. Frank Lampard was still there. I was never really sold about him. Never. I always found him good, but not good enough, in my opinion. So, let's look at some of the deals that are making the rounds today. Like I've told you, Flamingo have agreed a deal in principle to sign Lucas Paqueta from West Ham United. Then Juventus did reach out to PSG to find out the situation on Rwando Kolomwani, who we know is on loan to Tottenham Hotspur from PSG. That's after the El Nassr deal was put off. Then you remember the former Arsenal and ex-Juventus defender, Stefan Lichtsteiner? Yes, he's just agreed a new, he's just been signed as a new FC Basel head coach until June 2029. So Stefan Lichtsteiner is now a manager. So Then Marcelo's son, Enzo Alves, today signed his first pro contract at Real Madrid. So let's see how that will go. Then Nottingham Forest are did make an offer of £35 million to Crystal Palace in an attempt to sign Jean-Philippe Mateta. Crystal Palace want out at least £40 million. I say pay it if you're convinced he's the guy. We're talking about a club that just signed Lorenzo Luca, a striker, for €1 million on loan from Napoli with an option to buy. Not an obligation, but an option to buy for €40 million. Nottingham Forest seem to have the cash. Let them splash it. They did splash it in the summer. Then Fulham were advancing in negotiations with Manchester City over Oscar Bob for around £35 million. I mean, some of these teams, the way they sell players is admirable. Getting 35 million quid for Oscar Bob, yes, I understand he's a young player with future ahead of him, but damn, I'd say great deal of money. And that's before we talk add-ons. Then Chelsea did recall Anselmon, the defender who was at BVB, Aaron Anselmino. Yes. He was out on loan at Borussia Dortmund. They recalled him. So we'll wait and see what will happen with that. So in the coming days. So anyways, guys, in terms of the gossip and speculation, here's what is happening. Manchester City are actively keeping tabs on England right back Alexander Trent-Arnold as uncertainty continues to grow over the 27-year-old's future at Real Madrid, according to Team Talk. Then Liverpool have contacted ex-Real Madrid boss Xabi Alonso's representatives to inquire about the Spaniard's availability, with the 44-year-old reportedly giving a positive response to his former club's approach. That is according to AS in Spanish. Bournemouth are close to completing the signing of Vasco da Gama's Brazilian forward Ran on a permanent deal, according to The Athletic. The Lazio have submitted an offer worth £15 million for Everton's 22-year-old English midfielder, Tim Iro Banham. Then Chelsea and Man United are tracking Stade Rennes' 18-year-old striker, Mohamed Kada Meite. Then, meanwhile, Ligue 1 side Rennes have rejected Chelsea's January approach for French under-21 centre-back Jeremy Jacquet, but the Blues remain keen on a summer deal for the 20-year-old. That's according to Fabrizio Romano. So things are happening, but we'll see. As we draw closer to the end of January, you'll hear more rumors and speculation regarding transfers as we see out, as we see out the January transfer window. Anyways, it's been a pleasure for me with you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the night. I'll continue to keep tabs on that game between Everton and Leeds United and see where the ball lands. But otherwise, thank you so much for those of you that have been part of tonight's broadcasts. Allow me wish you a blessed night, and until next time, bye-bye for now.